We have on the line right now, she's challenging Democrat U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and her name is Chele Farley, standing by on the line right now. Chele, good morning. Chele was recently endorsed by the Republican Party in New York State just a few days back, and good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Bill?
Wonderful. We have a lot of issues out there. This has been a rough couple of weeks in New York. First of all, why should voters in New York turn to you versus their current U.S. senator? What do you think your attributes are? Why should they vote for you?
Well, I am not a career politician. Kirsten Gillibrand has been in there for 9 years, and I ask people all the time, what has she really done for you? And, you know, whether it's job creation or tax relief or even public safety, I mean, the answer is really nothing.
Yeah.
So that's why I've traveled the state, and I keep talking to people who are just horrified by, you know, not one but two government shutdowns. And I think it's time for change, for somebody who can actually get there and be common sense and work with both sides of the aisle.
Can you give a little bit of your background, where you're from, what you've done, and tell the voters a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, let's see. I attended Stanford University. I was an engineering student, which actually wasn't a great surprise because my dad is also an engineer. In fact, I was on the math team in high school. And I went to Stanford because my mother's from California. She'd always dreamed of going to Stanford, got in, and then couldn't afford to go. So she was never, you know, more proud of me than the day where I was able to go. But I knew that I wanted to live and work in, you know, the greatest city in the world. So I got a job in finance, moved to New York City, and have lived in New York for, you know, over the last 25 years, almost 30.
Where, you know, there seems to be a world of difference when it comes to the gun issue, major cities versus rural areas. What are your thoughts on gun legislation, on AR-15s? Of course, we're coming off these horrible shootings.
We are, absolutely. And actually, I think that the country did an amazing job of stopping really halting domestic terrorism after 9/11, and we need to do the exact same thing with school shootings. And so there are a lot more things that can be done. Certainly, you know, I think we need to look at, you know, universal background checks, increasing the minimum age to 21, bump stocks, but also actually having, you know, armed patrol officers in every school, a single point of entry, having metal detectors, you know, at the school. I mean, these are things that can be done to make sure that our students are safe.
Do we need AR-15s? Some of these semiotic weapons. What's your take on those?
Well, my take is certainly we need to get rid of bump stocks, you know, which make everything automatic. I think there are 8 million AR-15s out there right now. I mean, the question is, are you going to take them away from people? I think the answer is no.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you.
Can I ask, you've kind of called Senator Gillibrand an extreme liberal. What are the stances that you are particularly bothered by?
There are several. I think that, you know, her position on Israel is extremely, you know, liberal and left-wing. As you know, she supported Linda Sarsour, who was one of the women's march leaders, you know, who is, you know, come out for Louis Farrakhan. I think that is extremely liberal. She has not, you know, supported sort of President Trump's strong stance on North Korea. And we've seen, you know, just yesterday how that seems to be working. The two of them are going to get together, much to everybody's surprise and, you know, hopefully, you know, delight. I mean, let's see what comes out of it, but at least it's a step in the right direction.
Go ahead.
Can I ask as well? I just read a quick news snippet that said no Republican has won statewide office in the Empire State since 2002. Why run as a Republican in New York for statewide office? That's a huge, you know, that's 15 years. No Republicans won statewide.
Who was the last? Was it Pataki that was the last?
Al D'Amato.
Oh, D'Amato. Yes. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I think that people don't necessarily just vote for the party; they vote for the person. The last candidate for, you know, the U.S. Senate only raised $300,000 when Kirsten Gillibrand had over $10 million. So I don't think you can say this is a Republican versus Democrat. This is, you know, someone who's incredibly well funded, and that's one thing that I'm doing. I was actually a unanimous choice of the Republican Party and the Conservative Party, and I think in many respects because they think that they need to replace Kirsten Gillibrand. I mean, she's all over the place on every issue. You know, Sonny, I was listening to your program earlier, and you were talking about, you know, the OJ interview.
Yeah.
And I know Judith Regan, who did that interview, quite well.
Mm-hmm.
She came to my wedding, and I was thinking to myself that, you know, Kirsten Gillibrand, you know, was probably on both sides of whether OJ was guilty as well.
That's interesting. I have to tell you, the one thing about our current U.S. Senator is she doesn't know this area at all. She spent little time here, doesn't know the names, doesn't know how to pronounce the names properly. What kind of commitment would you give to Upstate?
To travel there a lot. I mean, I've been doing that so far, and I want to continue. You know, I was the finance chair for the Republican Party, and I traveled around the state. And, you know, I've been to, you know, Corning and Batavia and Watertown, you know, Lake Canandaigua and the Finger Lakes, you know, as well as the big cities, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany. I was in Binghamton last night. In fact, my father used to do a lot of business in Rome. But I think that that's what needs to be done. And the real key is to sort of listen to people, what the issues are. I mean, my big issue is bringing our tax dollars back. And I think that's something that Kirsten has really fallen down on. I was stunned, and taxpayers are stunned to know that $40 billion, that New York taxpayers send $40 billion more to Washington back than we get back in New York every year. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. And think about what that could do. You know, I may be an engineer, but it doesn't take an engineer to know that our infrastructure is crumbling.
Did you support
we need to replace, you know, our bridges, our roads, our tunnels, our water infrastructure.
Would you have supported the president's tax bill, despite the fact that economists said that it would hurt states, high-tax states like New York?
Yeah, I think that's a great example. I actually think that, you know, Kirsten just sat on her hands rather than doing anything. No, I would have negotiated a better deal for New York. I mean, I think it's appalling that we lost the state and local tax deduction cold turkey. That if somebody had been in there, it could have, you know, worst case, been phased out. We could have gotten an increased cap from $10,000 to $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. I mean, look, Marco Rubio was able to double the child tax credit. Why couldn't, you know, somebody, if there had been, you know, a senator in there fighting for New York? I mean, that's what I've done in my professional life. I negotiate, and that's what you need to do. You've got to sit there. I mean, Kirsten Gillibrand is, you know, trying to raise her profile to run for president. I just want to represent the people of New York.
In Mississippi, the news right now is the governor, I think, will probably sign this. This will be challenged most likely at the in the higher courts and certainly probably at the Supreme Court level. But I think they've banned all abortions past, is it 15 weeks?
It is 15 weeks. But actually, the bill in front of the Senate, and I said I would, and just so you know, I'm pro-choice. But I would support the the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which was passed the House and was in the Senate to ban abortion after 20 weeks.
Got it. It's funny. I was discussing this with somebody the other day. It seems like neither side wants to budge on any issues. By the way, it seems like on any issues, period, in the United States today. But is there anyone out there that can look you straight in the face and say late-term abortion is a partial birth abortion is a good thing, unless maybe you could debate over the life of the mother? Where are you on that?
I mean, I agree with that. I mean, in fact, this Pain Capable has exclusions for for rape, for incest, of course, for the life of the mother.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
You said your father did a lot of business in Rome.
Yeah, he worked for Raytheon.
What was the company that I didn't recognize?
Raytheon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess the final question I would have is: the president is a New Yorker. Boy, he just lets it out there. What's your take on President Trump?
My take on President Trump is that it should be a great thing that we have a president from our state, and that we need to work with him and everyone in the administration to get as much as possible for New York. One of the things that's here back to the infrastructure is this Gateway project, and I think that we need to get those monies because it just in order to get the train going from Washington to Boston, it's got to go through the tunnels between New Jersey and New York. And, I mean, that should be a federal project. And we could easily pay for it
Yeah.
with the $40 billion that New York sends down to Washington every year. And that's what we need to do. We've got to sit there and negotiate all of those deals to make sure that, New York is getting its fair share.
Yesterday, the president, of course, signed in executive order fashion, signed yesterday this tariffs, these tariffs on aluminum and on steel. Where are you on that? A lot of people cautioning him, saying this could create a trade war. It could create big problems and a net loss for the United States. What do you think?
I think there are smart people on both sides of the issue. And I think one of the key things is we need more jobs. And I think the president's trying to do what he can to, increase jobs. I'm looking at it the same way, thinking that if we can bring some of these infrastructure jobs back, we can, create good jobs for people by repairing the bridge, the tunnels, the water supply. And that's really what it takes.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens with the tariffs.
And then what do you think of, this has just been breaking news, one after another in the last couple of days, but what do you think of this Kim Jong-un story where the president's going to meet with him? Interestingly, very few people are talking about the fact that the conversation seemed to be about the denuclearization of that region. And I would caution everybody, I'm not sure we're going to be stepping down anytime soon in that region, but what's your take on it?
I think that obviously it's a whole lot better for them to talk than the alternative.
Yeah.
So I am very much in favor of that. Let's see what happens with it. So yeah, I would say I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay. Shell, by the way, is spelled Chele. So when you see the name, you'll recognize it. Chele Farley for U.S. Senate as a Republican. We appreciate you taking the time this morning.
Bill, thank you. It was a real pleasure. The next time I'm in Utica, I would love to stop by and meet you face to face.
Let's do it in studio. Love to do that. Thanks so much.
Thank you.